Hey there, and welcome to an ESO build guide. I'm Dying Legacy, and this is the Dreadcaller build, a Magicka Necromancer for solo content. Necromancers as a class come with great healing, DPS and tanking skills. This build takes advantage of that, helping us take on veteran dungeons and arenas like a calm stroll through a park. This is a quick build guide. We'll be going over the race, attributes, Munda Stones, food, potions, gear, skills, passives and champion point startables. The info will be minimal, so I'll only be going over what's necessary. However, do feel free to comment below if you'd like a full detailed guide or if there's anything I could do better. With the intro covered, let's go over the Dreadcaller build. Starting with the race, it doesn't really matter what you use, it's your adventure, do what you want and play how you want. But if you're looking for suggestions, I'd recommend either the Breton if you're looking for more sustain, the Khajiit for extra critical damage, or a High Elf for extra spell damage. For the attributes, we are putting 64 points into Magicka, and for our Munda Stone, when we're doing solo content, we're taking the Lover Munda Stone for that extra spell and physical penetration. When doing content as part of a group, we'll be taking the Thief Munda Stone instead for extra critical rating. For our food, we are taking Clockwork Citrus Fillet to increase our health recovery, max Magicka and Magicka recovery. You can pick these up at a guild vendor or make it yourself at a cooking station if you have the recipe. This can be rather expensive to get your hands on, in which case the cheaper option is the Witch Mother's Potent Brew. The stats are slightly lower and it doesn't give health recovery, but it's a very small difference and it doesn't matter which one you use. Best bet's always to go with what's cheaper. For our potions, we are using Essence of Spell Power, which grants us Major Sorcery, Major Prophecy, Major Intellect and restores some Magicka immediately. We'll be using these for those longer and tougher fights. We can grab these at a guild vendor or make them ourselves at an alchemy station. If you haven't gotten any on you at the time, you can always pop an Essence of Magicka instead. They will give us Major Intellect and restore some Magicka immediately. They might not be as useful as Spell Power potions, but they are better than nothing and they do drop from almost every mob among Tamriel, so your bag should probably be full of them. Moving on to the gear now, we have the option to use a Maelstrom, Inferno Staff and Pale Order Ring on this build. They aren't necessary by any means and we have options in their stead, which we'll go over first. We are using 7 light armor pieces on this build, all with the Divine trait and a Magicka enchant. For the jewellery, we're using the Bloodthirsty trait and spell damage enchants. For our weapons, we're using an Inferno Staff on our front bar with the Precise trait and the Fire enchant. For our back bar, we're taking another Inferno Staff with the Infuse trait and a weapon damage enchant. Moving on to the sets themselves, starting with the body pieces, which are the chest, waist, hands, legs and feet. Our first choice is a trial set, and it's the Whirl of Depth set. This set is gotten from Dreadsail Reef, and on veteran difficulty you can grab a perfected version, which adds extra critical chance to the set. It's a minor increase compared to the unperfected version, so it doesn't matter what version you're using, just take whatever easiest to get or what you've got on you. The set itself gives us weapon and spell damage, minus air at all times, and our light attacks add a damage over time effect to our target that deals frost damage over 8 seconds. When the effect ends, a whirlpool is created under the target, doing frost damage for a further 6 seconds. If you haven't stepped into a trial, or you want to use something else, you can use the Mother of Sorrow set, which is gotten from overland content in Deshan. You can get this from world bosses, dells, public dungeons or chests. You can also buy it from a guild vendor. This set adds a lot of critical chance, and it also adds extra Magicka. For our weapons and jewellery, we are going with the Zen's Redress set, found in the Lair of Marcelock DLC dungeon. This set adds magic recovery, weapon and spell damage, and max Magicka. Your light attacks apply the Touch of Zen to an enemy for 20 seconds, causing them to take 1% more damage for each damage over time effect you've placed on them. For our monster sets, for our helms and shoulder slots, we can use the Ice Heart set. The helm can be gotten from Direfrost Keep on Veteran and the shoulders from the Undaunted vendors. This set adds critical chance, and when we deal critical damage, we have a chance to gain a damage shield that also deals frost damage to nearby enemies. Another good choice is the Slimecraw set from Wayrest Sewers 1. Again, the helm from Veteran difficulty and the shoulders from the Undaunted vendor. Slimecraw is going to add extra critical chance, and it also gives us minor berserk at all times. Now, for the Ring of the Pale Order, which is gotten from the Antiquity system. When using this, we'll heal for 20% of all the damage we do. We can't be healed by anyone but ourselves, and the healing we do does decrease when we're in groups. The ring will take up a ring slot obviously, so we'll need to wear our jewellery set on either our shoulder or helm. The slot doesn't matter, we will lose our 2 set bonus from the monster set, but the Pale Order ring makes up for it. You can stick with the Slimecraw set for the 1 piece bonus, or you could also use the Magma Incarnate set. The head is found in Dreadcellar DLC dungeon on Veteran, and the shoulder from the Undaunted vendor. Magma Incarnate's 1 set bonus will give us Magicka and stamina recovery, which is very good for our sustain. Lastly is the Maelstrom Inferno staff, which is gotten from Maelstrom Arena, and we'll be using this on our back bar. There's a perfected version from Veteran difficulty which adds extra offensive penetration. It doesn't matter which version we use, as we are more interested in the base effect, which is when enemies stand in our wall of elements, they take extra damage from our light and heavy attacks. That covers the gear, and now it's time for the skills. Starting with the front bar, first skill up is Skeletal Arcanist, morphed from Skeletal Mage and found in the Gravelord skill line. You'll summon a Skeletal Mage for 16 seconds to deal shock damage to enemies. This will create a corpse on death. Next up is Ricochet Skull, morphed from Flame Skull, which is found in the Gravelord skill line. This throws a skull that does flame damage, and every third cast does extra damage, and it will also bounce to other enemies. Unnerving Boneyard is next, morphed from Boneyard. This can be found in the Gravelord skill line as well. This will pop an AoE down for 10 seconds that deals frost damage over 10 seconds and applies major breach to enemies inside it. This will consume a corpse to deal extra damage, and an ally can use the Graveyard synergy, dealing frost damage and healing for the damage done. Our next skill is Stalking Blastbones, morphed from Blastbones and also found in the Gravelord skill line. Summon a skeleton to run at enemies and explode, dealing flame damage. The longer the skeleton chases an enemy, the more damage it does. This will also create a corpse on death. We are also using Mystic Siphon, morphed from Shocking Siphon, and again is found in the Gravelord skill line. This drains life from a corpse, dealing shock damages to enemies near it, and it will also increase our Magicka, stamina and health recovery. And while slotted, it'll increase our damage done by 3%. And for the ultimate on the front bar, we are using Ice Comet, morphed from Meteor and found in the Mage's Guild skill line. This hits enemies in an area, dealing frost damage, knocking them down and reducing their movement speed. After the impact, enemies in the target area will take frost damage for 13 seconds. That covers our front bar, so naturally next up is the back bar, starting with Unstable Wall of Fire. This is morphed from Wall of Elements and found in the Destruction Staff skill line. This will create a line of fire in front of us for 10 seconds, dealing flame damage to enemies standing in it, and when the skill ends, the Wall of Fire explodes, dealing more flame damage. And if you're using the Maelstrom Inferno staff, any enemy that's standing in this is going to take extra damage from our light and heavy attacks. Scalding Rune is next, morphed from Fire Rune and found in the Mage's Guild skill line. This inscribes a rune of fire that when triggered blasts enemies in the area with flame damage, and it will also deal extra flame damage over 14 seconds. Up next is Degeneration, morphed from Entropy and found in the Mage's Guild skill line. This will deal magic damage over 12 seconds to an enemy and also grants us major brutality and sorcery when used for 24 seconds. We're also using Spirit Guardian, which is morphed from Spirit Mender and is found in the Living Death skill line. This will summon a ghost to heal you over 16 seconds, and also 10% of the damage you take is transferred to the ghost instead. This will also create a corpse on death. Our next skill is Harness Magicka, morphed from Annulment and is found in the Light Armor skill line. This will give us a damage shield for 6 seconds, and while the shield is active and you take damage, you can restore some Magicka. And finally, for the ultimate on our back bar, we're using Glacial Colossus, morphed from Frozen Colossus. The Colossus will smash the ground 3 times, dealing frost damage, and the final smash will stun enemies. And dealing damage to the enemies will also apply major vulnerability. That covers the skills on the build, so let's quickly go over the passives to match with those skills. Starting with our class passives, first up is the Gravelord skill line. We want to take everything in here, which includes reusable parts, Death Knell, Dismember, and Rapid Rot. In the Bone Tyrant skill line, we'll only be taking one passive, and that passive is Last Grasp. The other passives can't be taken because we're not using any of the Bone Tyrant skills to activate those passives. And next is the Living Death skill line. In here, we'll be taking Curative Curse, Near Death Experience, Corpse Consumption, and Undead Confederate, so we'll be taking everything. We are using Destruction Staff, so we'll take everything in the Destruction Staff skill line. These are Trifocus, Penetrating Magic, Elemental Force, and Ancient Knowledge, and also Destructive Expert. We are wearing full light armor, so we'll take everything in the light armor skill line too, which are Grace, Evocation, Spell Warding, Prodigy, and Concentration. Next up is the guild passives, starting with the Mage's Guild. From here we will take Mage Adept, Everlasting Magic, Magicka Controller, and Might of the Guild. And next is the Undaunted passives. In here we'll be taking Undaunted Command, and Undaunted Metal. This next passive is an optional passive and can be found in the Assault skill line, and it's Continuous Attack. We only need to put 1 point into this to gain Major Gallop. If you do happen to put a second point in, you won't gain anything else unless you plan on doing Cyrodiil. Now this is only an optional passive, this just helps us get around the map a bit quicker when we're mounted. But moving on to the racial passives, these are specific to your race, you will want to grab everything. However, the passives themselves are specific to every race, so you will need to have a quick read over them to see what they do, just so you can understand them and see what benefits and advantages you get. So do make sure you grab everything in your racial passive skill line. And lastly, one more optional passive, which I would class myself as necessary, and it's Medicinal Use. This can be found in the Alchemy skill line. This passive is going to cause our potions to last much longer, and it makes the potions outlast their cooldown, so you can always have a potion active. This is a handy passive to have, just so you get full benefits of your potions at all times. And that covers the passives, and now onto the champion point slottables, beginning in the Warfare tree. In here, we're going to want to take Fighting Finesse to increase our critical damage and critical healing, Deadly Aim to increase our damage done with single target attacks, Thaumaturge to increase our damage done with damage over time effects, and Master at Arms to increase your damage done with direct damage attacks. In the Fitness tree, we're going to be taking Boundless Vitality to increase our health, Fortify to increase our armor, and Rejuvenation to increase our sustain. And we'll also be taking Siphoning Spells just to get a little bit of extra sustain whenever we kill an enemy. And lastly, in the Craft skill line, it really doesn't matter what you take in here, as everything's very specific and everyone has their own different ways of playing. But for myself, when playing solo, I like to take Treasure Hunter to increase quality of items found in treasure chests, Rationeer to add extra duration to my food, Liquid Efficiency, so whenever I use a potion or poison, I have a slight chance to not consume that potion or poison, and Steed's Blessing, which is going to increase our out of combat movement speed. Again, this is just going to make it handier to get around the maps, and just, you know, for soloing in general, just so you can be a little bit quicker. That covers the Craft skill line, and with that out of the way, it means that we've covered the champion slottables, and everything for the Dreadcaller build. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope this was helpful in some way or another. And if it did, why not like and subscribe? We have a build up once a week and it helps me immensely. The channel is starting to grow, so I would like to thank all of those who subscribed. I appreciate it, and I hope you're enjoying the content. If you've any thoughts, suggestions, or just want to have a chat, comment below and let's have a little banter. I also stream on Twitch over at twitch.tv/dyinglegacy. We play a lot of ESO over there, and I do showcase a lot of these builds, and I also show off my main builds. And every now and again we do some variety content too, but mostly MMOs where I mostly swear and get trolled for getting lost all the time. Thanks again, guys. You've been absolutely fantastic. I've been Dying Legacy, and until next time, stay awesome.